Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Torah class. You see, this is a different surrounding. I got the Sea of Galilee behind me. I've tried a little different setup here. Not actually at the Sea of Galilee, but I've been playing around trying to get this organized that we're just going to go with this scene because I think it's working. But anyway, we are up to session 11 out of the 33 sessions. And I hope you've had a chance to watch the first 10. It won't make much sense if you watch them out of order, but just to summarize, and we're not going to redo the last session, but just to summarize, we've been with Joseph in the land of Egypt, and we saw how he was sold into slavery by his brothers. First, they wanted to kill him, then they sold him into slavery. They wanted a group of Gentiles to get rid of him, to get him out of their hair. Because, of course, they didn't like him. He had special clothes. His father loved him more than the others. So he ended up at Potiphar's house. He gets thrown in jail because of Mrs. Potiphar. I always call her that because we don't know what her name was. And I know there's no live audience now to laugh at my jokes. She got in trouble with Mrs. Potiphar, got thrown in jail, interpreted the dreams of two of Pharaoh's servants who were in jail. After 2 more years, he gets out of jail, interprets Pharaoh's dream. Things go well for Joseph. While he's at Potiphar's house, he runs everything. Everything thrives. When he's in the jail, he's in charge of everything. Everything thrives. And then he gets brought before Pharaoh, and he interprets Pharaoh's dream and tells Pharaoh there's going to be 7 years of plenty, and then there's going to be 7 years of famine. And so he tells Pharaoh the solution to this is to build warehouses all around the country, and during the times of good harvest, to store food in the warehouses. So when the times of famine come, then they'll have the food there to distribute. And Pharaoh is so excited that he makes Joseph governor of Egypt. And as we saw last time, it says that no one could move a hand or a foot in Egypt without Joseph's permission. So he becomes second in power only to the Pharaoh. And we know that we saw that the famine affected the people in the land of Canaan, and Jacob sent his boys there. 10 of them, he kept Benjamin behind. They didn't know Joseph. Joseph knew them. He kept Simeon, Shimon as a kind of a hostage, told them to go back and get his brother Benjamin and come back. And he sent them off with provision, all kinds of food, grain, and so forth, and gave them their money back. So we're going to go into, we're going to kind of take it from there, but one more little summary thing, and then we're going to take it from there. But the important point we're trying to make here is that all through the Torah, you see types and shadows of Jesus, Yeshua, the Messiah. And Joseph is one of the prime types of Jesus, of Yeshua. And when we get to Moses, you're going to see like event after event that makes Moses a type and a prefigurement of Yeshua, the Messiah. So here we see that he gives his brothers provisions and doesn't charge them anything. We have, of course, the most important provision, which is salvation. He doesn't charge us anything for that. And the provisions that we get through our lives, both our, not only just our spiritual life, but our physical lives as well. And we see how his brothers, who represent the Israelites, especially the leaders, hated him and wanted to get rid of him. Just like later, the religious leaders are going to hate Yeshua because he doesn't measure up to what they're expecting. And so they want to kill him. They do, in fact, kill him. And we're going to see when we're going to make a list at the end of all these types and shadows. But we see that the high priest in Jesus' time counted on the Gentile Romans to get rid of this troublemaker. And here, Joseph's brothers sell him to these Midianite traders who take him to Egypt. So they basically enlisted Gentiles to get rid of him. So then the famine was very, very severe, And we ended up last time that Joseph's brothers come. They still don't recognize him. He only speaks Egyptian. He speaks to them through an interpreter, although he understands them, of course. And he's dressed like an Egyptian. And one of the reasons that Jews of, well, many centuries, not just today, don't recognize Yeshua is that he's dressed in their eyes like a Gentile. They feel that we know that he is our Hebrew, he's our Jewish Messiah, and we as Gentiles are included in the kingdom and included in the plan of salvation. They see Yeshua in a totally different way, that he was, quote, made a god, unquote, by Gentiles who worship him. They see this as idolatry and blasphemy. And so they kind of see Jesus dressed as a Gentile and don't recognize him as their own Jewish Messiah. So when they're in this room, he prepares a feast for them. And you remember when he brings the food, Benjamin, his little brother, who's his full-blooded brother. All of the boys have Jacob as their father, but Joseph and Benjamin have Rachel as their mother. Okay, so that's about where we left it off last time, because, the boys were kind of worried. And they had bowed down to Joseph before, when they first came. Now they bow down to Joseph again, which fulfills the dream he had that his brothers would bow down to him, which had upset the brothers so much. And so when he saw Benjamin, he set himself off and he wept because he wanted to be by himself. And they sat separately to eat. Benjamin got 5 times more food. And then he packs their bags again with grain. And again, gives them all their stuff back. And he goes through this kind of intrigue, and you could read this for your homework in Genesis 42, 43, 44. And as I always say, we can't read every verse of the Torah while we're doing this study, because although you should at home, but if we do this in kind of video and audio format, it'll take a year to do. Nothing wrong with that, but we're doing the summarize, we're doing the survey course, because the whole point of this whole course is to show that when Jesus, Yeshua, said all the scriptures are about me, how all these things prefigured him. So again, he plays a little bit of intrigue, because after all, Joseph is human, and his brothers treated him pretty badly. But he also wants an excuse to keep them there. And so he plants this silver cup inside Benjamin's bag, and they find the cup, and they bring them back. And, Judah then goes to argue with Joseph, of course, not realizing that it's Joseph. And Judah says, look, if you let Benjamin go, I'll be your slave. We can all be your slaves, but I'll be your slave, because we can't have somebody go back and tell our father that Benjamin has been killed, or that Benjamin is in prison, because he's an old man. He's already lost one son. And of course, Judah didn't know this was Joseph standing there. He's already lost one son. If he loses the youngest one, the son of his old age, the son of his right hand, he's going to die. He won't be able to handle it. And so they bowed down to Joseph again for the 3rd time. Ultimately, all the Israelites are going to bow down to Yeshua, Jesus the Messiah. I'm sorry, I'm using both of his names. I like to call him Yeshua, because that's, as my friend Paul Wilbur likes to say, that's what his mother called him. But, the brothers rejected him when he was here. Ultimately, they're going to bow down to him when all Israel is saved, which going to be an exciting time, and I hope it's going to happen real soon. I think it is going to happen real soon. So Judah pleads with Joseph, and of course, Joseph's speaking to him through a translator, through an interpreter. So after this goes on for a while, Joseph couldn't stand it anymore. And let's go down to chapter 45, Genesis 45 at the beginning. Then Joseph could not restrain himself before all those who stood by, and he cried out, "Make everyone go out from me." So no one stood with him while Joseph made himself known to his brothers. In other words, the brothers stay, he ordered all the Egyptians out. This is kind of going to happen. We've referred a couple of times to Zechariah chapter 12, verse 10, where the prophet says that the Spirit's going to be poured out on Jerusalem, a new, fresh outpouring of Spirit, and they're going to look at him whom they have pierced. Some translations say they're going to look at me whom they have pierced. In other words, all the Jews are suddenly going to realize that Yeshua is the Messiah and that they missed this. And it says they're going to mourn as you mourn for an only son. In other words, it's going to be kind of a bittersweet. There's going to be an excitement and a joy of, oh, this is the Messiah. But there's going to be this mourning of, oh, I can't believe for 2,000 years we've missed this. I can't believe it. So it's going to be kind of a bittersweet excitement and happiness. And they're going to mourn like you mourn for an only son, because he's the Holy One of Israel. He's the only begotten Son of the Father. And they're suddenly going to realize that. So here, Joseph is standing in front of all 11 brothers now. Verse 2, and he wept aloud, and the Egyptians and the house of Pharaoh heard it. Joseph was weeping so hard that all the Egyptians heard it. Even at Pharaoh's house, they could hear it. Then Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Does my father still live? But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed in his presence. And Joseph said to his brothers, please come near to me. So they came near. Then he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. Now it says the brothers are, this translation says dismayed, which I'm not sure that really covers it, but you can imagine their reaction. They're stunned, they're speechless. They realize now this is Joseph, that 16 or 17-year-old kid that we sold to those Midianite traders. Probably, 20 years or more has gone by. We don't know exactly. And this is him. He's the governor of Egypt. He's second only to the Pharaoh. He's our brother. And partly they thought, oh no, now we're going to get the revenge. Any human being would think, now he's going to take out his revenge on us, especially since our father's not here to stop him. He says, I am Joseph. They couldn't even speak. And he tells them there's 5 more years of famine coming, but don't worry, go and tell Jacob, go and tell our father to come, bring all his stuff, bring all his people, bring the whole family, and I'll take care of you. I'll take care of you. So you can see this as a type of Messiah. I'm the Messiah that you rejected, but I love you and I want to take care of you. I'm going to take care of you through this famine. Bring all your people here. Come closer to me. Don't run away from me. I came here to save you, and I don't want you to run away. I don't want you to be afraid. Look what he tells them. Verse 5, but now, do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. For these years the famine has been in the land, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. And God sent me before you to preserve a posterity for you in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. Whoa. So Don't be upset. I know you feel angry and you feel scared because, angry with yourselves, I should say, and scared because you sold me into Egypt. But it wasn't you who sent me here. This was God's plan. The plan was to save you by having me come to Egypt and securing your supply of food, all the provision that you're going to need. You can kind of see this as the parallel with Yeshua, Jesus, the Messiah. The Father sent him. He was willing to go. This was the plan of salvation. The Father sent him. The brothers, who were the Israelites, had him killed, had him disposed of, so to speak, by these Gentiles, the Romans, and thought they were getting Yeshua out of their way, just like these brothers thought they were getting Joseph out of their way. But he says, you did those things, but it was the plan. It was God who sent me to Egypt. It was God who sent Messiah to die. You were the instruments of that happening, but it wasn't you who actually orchestrated it. So this is what Joseph's telling these guys. And it's going to be to save your life. In this case, it's going to be physical lives because they need food. Joseph has food. You know, Pharaoh said, go to Joseph when people went to him. Go to Joseph. He'll take care of you. You know, we say, go to Jesus. He'll take care of you. He has the provision. He has the means. He has the grace. He has the mercy. So he says, I'm here. I'm going to help you through these troubles. There's famine that's still coming. There's hard time that's coming. I'm going to help you through it. So don't be afraid. In fact, go back and get everybody and bring them here. Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, God has made me the Lord of Egypt. Come down to me, do not tarry. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near to me, you and your children's children, your flocks and your herds, and all that you have. Therefore I will provide for you, lest you and your household and all that you have come to poverty, for there are still 5 years of famine left. So get everybody and come for provision. He says, I'm the Lord of all of Egypt. Jesus, Yeshua, Messiah says, I'm the Lord of all the earth. I'm the Lord of all the universe. I sit on the throne of my father David forever. Just come here and I'll take care of you. There isn't anything that you need that I can't provide. And number one on that list, of course, is salvation, because there is salvation in no other name, as Peter tells the Israelites that morning of Pentecost. So you kind of see the excitement here on a family level, on a national level, an international level, I guess. But the spiritual aspect of it is he is being a Messiah to them. He is speaking like in 2,000 more years or whatever it is, Yeshua, Jesus is going to be speaking and is still speaking today because he's still sitting on the throne of David. He's still giving us provision and he's still bringing salvation to anyone who comes to him. So Joseph does this awesome thing when he just can't take it anymore. And says, and behold, your eyes and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see that it is my mouth that speaks to you. See, I'm Joseph, I'm telling you this, and look, I got all the royal stuff on. I'm the governor of Egypt, and I'm telling you that this is how it's going to be. So don't worry. It's my mouth that speaks. You know, when Yeshua, Messiah, Jesus comes, God is going to be speaking with the voice of a man. Going to be speaking through a man so that everyone understands it, so that people can process what he's saying. If you remember it, well, we haven't gotten to it yet in the course, but you know the story. When the people are at the base of Mount Sinai and the mountain is covered with the Shekinah glory and there's thunder and shofar blasts and lightning and this roaring voice of God speaking to Moses, the people back off and they say, whoa, we can't deal with this. This is too much for us. Have God talk to Moses, and then Moses can tell us what God said. And God said, that's a good idea for these people. And what's happening is he is prefiguring in that interchange that when Messiah, Jesus, comes, people are going to be hearing the voice of a man who's going to be telling them the word of God, just like the word of God came to Moses on the mountain. But now it's going to be in a form that's more easy to process. Whew, so how awesome is that? So then, of course, it goes on. Pharaoh gets all excited that he's coming, that the family's going to come. Pharaoh loves it. When Jacob dies in a few chapters, Pharaoh has like a military funeral for him to take him back to the land of Canaan so he can be buried with his father and grandfather. So in verse 14 it says, 13 he says, so you shall tell my father of all my glory in Egypt, and of all you have seen, and you shall hurry and bring my father down here. Then he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck, and he wept. And Benjamin wept on his neck. Moreover, he kissed all his brothers and wept over them. And after that, his brothers talked with him. So again, reunited with the brothers. They realize now he's not going to take vengeance on them. He's in fact going to bless them. The Israelites are going to come to Yeshua at a time, as Paul tells us in Romans 11, all Israel will be saved. I think that time is coming very, very shortly. Because in my opinion, we're living at the end of the end time. And it's going to happen. It could happen any time. But Yeshua is going to bring his brothers close, not going to condemn them. He's going to save them, and he's going to provide for them. So Pharaoh gets all excited that Jacob and his family are coming. And Jacob, of course, for 20 years has thought that Joseph was dead. So Joseph sends donkey carts full of stuff with them, and they go back and tell their father that he's alive. It says in verse, let's go down to 26. They told him, meaning Jacob, saying, Joseph is still alive, and he is governor over all the land of Egypt. And Jacob's heart stood still, because he did not believe them. But when they told him all the words which Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the carts which Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of Jacob their father revived. Then Israel, Jacob, said, it is enough. Joseph, my son, is alive, and I will go and see him before I die. So Jacob agrees to take the whole family to Egypt. Whole family. 70 people go. Ultimately, 70 people go into Egypt. And as he's on his way, as he's kind of thinking about everything, he gets to Beersheba. Let's start in verse 46. So Israel took his journey with all that he had and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. Then God spoke to Israel in the visions of the night. I love that term, like Daniel, the visions of the night. And said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, here I am. God repeats his name twice, Jacob, Jacob. In Hebrew custom, when you say somebody's name twice, that means listen very carefully to what I'm going to tell you. This is going to be very important what I'm going to tell you. So he says, Jacob, Jacob. Jacob answers with the great Hebrew word I love, Hineni, here I am. I'm available. What do you want me to do? What is it that you want? That's all encapsulated in the word that's used there. Verse 3, so he, meaning God, said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not fear to go down to Egypt, for I will make of you a great nation there. 70 people are going to go in, and about 435 years later, 600 and some thousand men, plus women, plus girls, plus boys under 13 are going to come out. So 70 people is going to turn into probably 2 million, 2.5 million, because they're going to go from being a family to being a nation. When they went in, it was kind of like a family reunion. When they come out, they're going to be a nation of maybe 2 million. Verse 4, I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will surely bring you up again. And Joseph will put his hand on your eyes. Then Jacob arose from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried their father Jacob, their little ones, and their wives in the carts that Pharaoh had sent for them. So God says, don't be afraid to go to Egypt. I'm going to make you a nation while you're there. I'm going there with you, and then I'm going to bring you out from there. In Isaiah, I don't have it in front of me, but there's a verse that says, when has one nation been taken out of another nation? Maybe that wasn't Isaiah. I don't know, I can't remember now. But that's exactly what's going to happen in the Exodus. So 70 people, so the whole family goes in. And Jacob and Joseph are reunited in the land of Goshen. Goshen was the best part of Egypt, the most fertile land, the best weather. Everything was great. And that's where they settled, with Pharaoh's blessing. And Pharaoh was happy as a clam about this. And so Jacob and Joseph get reacquainted. And Joseph shows them his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, that have been born to him in the land of Egypt. And then it goes on to say, this is why some people don't like the Old Testament. It goes on to say, like, all the people that went into Egypt, pretty much. So you can imagine this reunion of Jacob and Joseph. Jacob even gets to meet the Pharaoh. Now, can you imagine? Jacob's this guy who's got some flocks, and he's got a big family, and he's in the land of Canaan, and he goes to meet the most powerful man in the world. This is the height of the Egyptian empire. The most powerful man in the world. And this guy Jacob, who's really a nobody except to God, gets to meet the emperor, the king, the Pharaoh. So the whole family settles there. Joseph's happy. Everybody's happy. So we're going to come to the end here. We're going to cover 49 and 50 real quick. Then we'll actually be done with Genesis, the first of the 5 books. But don't worry, because we go through Leviticus in 2 sessions. And again, don't tell your Jewish friends we're doing all of Leviticus in 2 sessions, because then you'll have to do resuscitation on them. But for our purposes, you'll get the picture. So when we get down to verse 49, Jacob knows that he's dying, and he blesses the sons. And the blessings are not real nice. I'm not going to read all of them, but the blessings are not real nice. There's only 2 we're going to concentrate on. The first is Judah, Yehudah. We know that Jesus is from the tribe of Judah. We know that all the kings came from the tribe of Judah. First, David and Solomon. Saul was not from the tribe of Judah. That was part of the problem. He was from the tribe of Benjamin. So David and Solomon, and the kingdom is split. The kings of the south all come from Judah. After the exile in Babylon, there is no more monarchy. But we know that the line of David is preserved, the royal line, because Jesus is from the line of David. He's the son of David. He sits on the throne of David forever. He's still sitting on the throne of David. And we can't measure it in time, but 28 billion years from now, he'll still be sitting on the throne of David. So the blessing that he gives to Judah is a good one. This is verse 8 of 49. Judah, you are whom your brothers shall praise. Judah means praise God. Or as we would say, praise the Lord. Jacob says, your brothers are going to praise you. Now, we've seen Judah be pretty much of a jerk during this whole thing. He's a smart aleck, he's pompous, he's arrogant, he wants to kill his brother, then he sells his brother off, deceives his father, goes through all this stuff. But Judah, you are he whom your brothers shall praise. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Many times in the scripture it talks about Jesus' enemies are going to become his footstool. Because, in the ancient times when you conquered another king, that king came and knelt before you, and the victorious king would put his foot on the neck of the vanquished king. And that was called making your enemy your footstool. So this is what's going to happen with Messiah. Your father's children shall bow down to you. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He bows down, he lies down as a lion. And as a lion, who shall rouse him? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh comes. And to him shall be the obedience of the people. So he's the Lion of Judah. He roars like a lion. No one is going to be able to interfere with him or to rouse him. He's going to have prey because his enemies are going to be taken care of. He's the Lion of Judah. We know Jesus as the Lamb of God who takes away our sin. But when he comes back, he's going to be the Lion of Judah. There's not going to be meek and mild Jesus when he comes back. And the scepter is not going to depart from Judah. The scepter was a sign of authority. So the scepter is not going to depart from Judah because Jesus is going to reign on the throne forever and ever. There's going to be no end to his kingdom. So he's always going to have the scepter. And he's going to have the obedience of his people. And if you look down at verse 11, he washed his garments in wine and his clothes in the blood of grapes. So he's a lion. His people are going to obey. He's a ruler. He has the scepter. But his clothes have been washed in blood. This, of course, is a prefigurement of Judah's descendant, Yeshua, Jesus, who's going to suffer blood, who's going to provide blood atonement, not only for the sins going back to Adam and Eve, but to the sins going forward to the last person who commits the last sin at the very end of time, all covered by blood. So that's where the term Lion of Judah comes from. And then he blesses Joseph's sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, but he blesses them in a different order. The old man Jacob crosses his hands. You can read through this for your homework. And this becomes a traditional blessing to this day for Jews. May the Lord make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. And Jacob says Manasseh, the older one, is going to follow the older one. The younger one, who is Ephraim. When they get to the land, we're going to see Ephraim has a huge piece of land thriving. Manasseh wants to stay on the other side of the Jordan, and we'll get into that. But Ephraim becomes the more important of the two, right down to God saying, "Is not Ephraim my son?" I think that's in Jeremiah, but I don't have it in front of me, sorry. So those are kind of the blessings of the tribes. And then Jacob says, don't bury me here. When I die, I want to go back. I want to go be buried with my father, my grandfather, where Rachel and Leah are buried. I want to go back to the land. I don't want to stay here. In verse 33 of 49, it says, "Then when Jacob had finished commanding his sons, he drew his feet up into the bed and breathed his last and was gathered to the people." So he was 110 years old when he died. did a lot of things in his life. A lot of them were not very good. He was a deceiver. He was a supplanter, as his name Yaakov meant. And Joseph has him embalmed. The Egyptians were very good at this. I mean, King Tut, you could still recognize a human body after however many thousands of years. He had him embalmed, and they took him back to Canaan with a military escort from Pharaoh. Buried him, and it says, Egypt mourned for 70 days. 70 days, not 3 days, not 7 days, not a month. 70 days they mourned because Jacob had died. And he was buried in Hebron, the tomb of the patriarchs. Sorry, just seeing here what we should read. 50 verse 15. Now the sons start to have a little different thought here. Now that our father is gone, now Joseph's going to take revenge on us. He just didn't want to do it while the old man was still alive. 15. Now when Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, perhaps Joseph will hate us and may actually repay us for all the evil we did to him. So they sent messengers to Joseph saying, before your father died, he commanded, saying, thus you shall say to Joseph, I beg you, please forgive the trespasses of your brothers and their sin, for they did evil to you. And Joseph wept when they spoke this to him. They're worried he's going to take revenge. They remind him that their father had said, they did bad to you, but don't take revenge on him. Joseph started to weep. His brothers went and said, behold, we are your servants. Verse 19, Joseph said to them, do not be afraid, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring it about as it is this day, to save many people alive. Therefore, do not be afraid. I will provide for you, your little ones. And he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. So he says, I'm not going to take revenge. You did horrible things to me. You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. This was the plan. The Israelites of Yeshua's day wanted him killed. The religious leaders wanted him out of the way. We want him killed. We're going to have the Gentiles do it. That's going to be it. When Israel realizes that he's Messiah, he's going to say, yes, you meant this for evil, but God meant it for good. This was to save not only you, and you rejected it for a time, but also Gentiles to make the kingdom. You meant it for evil. God meant it for good, because this was the whole plan of salvation. It had nothing to do with you. You were the instruments by which it was done. So don't be afraid. I will provide for you. You meant this evil thing. You had this evil thing done to me, but I'm going to provide for you. So Joseph finally dies, and he's embalmed, and he made the brothers promise that when they went back to the land, he prophesied again that in 400 years they would be delivered from the land. And when they were delivered from the land, they would take his body with them, whatever was left of him. And they did, in fact, carry Joseph's remains through the whole wilderness. And finally buried him back in Canaan. So he dies in Egypt. So we see how he becomes a type, how he was a type of Yeshua the Messiah. He says, You meant it for evil. God meant it for good. I came here to preserve life. You didn't send me to Egypt. God did. God made me Lord of Pharaoh's house, ruler of the land. Now come to me and dwell in the best part of the land. I'll provide everything for you. And he says, my mouth speaks to you. Jesus says, I'm telling you God's word. I say what I hear the Father saying. I do what I see the Father doing. You see my glory here in Egypt. Yeshua says, you see the glory that I have in heaven, and you're going to share in that when you're done living here. And he weeps over his brothers. Jesus wept over the city. How often I wanted to gather you like a hen gathers her chicks, but you were not willing. He weeps over the city. Joseph wept over his brothers. And we talked about how, Jacob's blessing, about the line of Judah. And that's not Joseph's people, but you see how Judah's going to have control over the people. The brothers are going to bow to him. Judah's tribe is going to rule. Judah's tribe is going to have obedience of the people. They're going to have their robes washed in blood. And Joseph again goes back to what you meant for evil, God meant for good. These are all types. So there's a little summary. I just put together this little summary of Joseph as a type of Messiah. He's the favorite son. Of course, Jesus is the only son, the only begotten, in Greek, the monogenes. Joseph was a shepherd. Yeshua is the good shepherd. Both of them spent time in Egypt. We don't know how long Jesus was there. Joseph was there a long time. Both had a mission to save Israel. Joseph physically saved them. Yeshua, Jesus, to spiritually save them. Both of them, the brothers didn't believe. Their brothers did not believe them. The brothers hated Joseph. Hated him. The leaders hated Yeshua. Both of them had plots to kill them by their brothers. Joseph is sold by Judah into slavery, sold to Gentiles by Judah. Yeshua is sold by Judas, who we call Judas. His Hebrew name was Judas, Yehuda. The same man, the same name. Whoa, my image just freaked out. Oh, there it is. The same name. Sold Joseph into slavery, sold Yeshua to his death. Both were stripped of their garments. The Technicolor coat, the coat of many colors, and of course Yeshua was stripped of his clothes at the crucifixion. Joseph's tunic was covered with blood of an animal, blood of goats. Jesus' blood was his own blood that covered his clothes. Joseph's the blood of Joseph's tunic was from a goat, which is used in Yom Kippur, the scapegoat, the Azazel. That come to one of Messiah next time at Yom Kippur. We'll go over that in detail. But all the sins of the people are placed on the goat. Just like all the sins were placed on Yeshua, goat blood is used on Joseph's tunic. Both of them were raised out of a pit. Both were tested and overcame temptation. Jesus, of course, in the desert, tempted by Satan. Joseph with Potiphar's wife. Both were falsely accused and imprisoned. Both became important at age 30. Later, we're going to see that the priests came to the fullness of their priesthood at age 30. Both had people come to them for food. People came to Yeshua for spiritual food, yes. The Eucharist, the Lord's Supper, whatever you like to call it, but also physical food. He multiplied bread, he multiplied provision. The salvation of Israel was through Joseph. The salvation of the world was through Yeshua. Finally, Joseph's brothers all bowed down to him. Yeshua's brothers rejected him, but soon his brothers will bow down to him. And that's going to be a great day. I hope it's going to be soon. I hope I'm going to see it. I hope I'll be there when it happens. And lastly, the Gentiles accepted Joseph first. The Gentiles realized everything about Joseph that led them to use him to prosper all their stuff. For the most part, Gentiles accepted Yeshua first, in overwhelming numbers compared to the number of Jews. But soon, the Jews will be saved. The Jews will accept him. The Jews will recognize who he is. And when the brothers saw Joseph, they didn't recognize him. Just like Yeshua is not recognized by his brothers, the Israelites. They're both hidden messiahs. Joseph was a hidden messiah to his brothers. Yeshua is a hidden messiah to the current people who live in Israel. Hidden messiahs. The brothers thought Joseph was dead. They didn't know what happened to him after he got to Egypt. His father thought he was dead. Joseph thought Yeshua was dead from that day that they killed him. And then Joseph reveals himself and says, I am Joseph. And on that great day, which I hope is tomorrow, Yeshua, Jesus, is going to reveal himself to Israel and say, I'm Yeshua who you killed. Come to me. I did that for you. You meant it for evil. The Father meant it for good. Wow. So that ends session 11. It ends, the book of Genesis ends Joseph. So next week when we meet, we'll start with Exodus. So have a great day.